Okay, so it's bang on 11, so let's just get started then. I'm Steve Smith, Sales Director of Roma Finance. This will be recorded and used on our website at a later date and probably put out on LinkedIn and social media. If you have any questions, please just let me know during the conversation or wait at the end. I'll give you time then as well. We'll talk about conversions today and what we do at Roma Finance. Um, so happy to continue. So obviously, the ones that know us at Roma will know what we look for. We basically look at the borrower first and the property far, far below that. So we ask the questions, and if you're brokers and you've got the borrowers with you, please ask the right questions as well. You want to know your customers. The more we know about the customers, the easier the whole process is for all concerned, for you and us. So, what's the customer's motivation? Why are they in this space? Is it that it's their pension, it's their first ever one? Is it that they're an experienced property landlord? Any kind of background experience is great for us. And then costs and timescales being realistic. It's actually calming down a little bit in that space, but we've certainly seen, as I'm sure you have, during COVID, during various stages that we've had with Brexit and now Ukraine, we've had costs and timescales expand with valuers being out, solicitors being on holiday, and then the costs of actually the goods, the steel, the wood, everything really, timber, everything. So when you look at that, you have to look at that and make sure they're realistic. And how do they plan to exit? Which, from a bridging point of view, is probably the most important part for us. We want to see if that exit is actually realistic. Is it a sale? Have they got time to make that sale? Is it sort of a refinance in the current climate? Have they got the refinance term loans or mortgages available? As we're seeing a few sort of exit the marketplace due to the increase in base rates. But all I would say is that we like to know the borrower, we like to understand what they want to do with this property. And the more the information you can give us as the broker, the better and the quicker that is for to get through underwriting and processing and get to the other exit space, which is generally completion. So that's what we're looking to do at this stage. Obviously, we're looking at a lot of situations where we've seen a lot of closures, especially in the commercial space. According to the BBC recently, research showed that over 8,700 high street stores closed in the first 6 months alone of 2021. We haven't got the exact figures, but I think there's over 15,000 closed in the whole of 2021 across the country, and that's just in the high street stores. So we're looking at a change in commerciality. We're seeing that across the country. We're seeing that with, well, to be fair, COVID did exacerbate the situation, but certainly with the rise of the internet, we've seen different things with commercial premises. So there are a lot of commercial premises out there that are available for property developers to convert into residential dwellings. We're seeing a lot of that personally at Roma as well. So those is really what we're going to talk about today to a certain degree, and a little bit else about renovations and conversions. I suppose the most important part for any broker is that you know that we've got the money to lend, and we have. We've got 9 funding lines. They're not funding lines from overseas, they're funding lines from major British banks and building societies. So we have the firepower to meet sort of all kinds of deals, which is why our products are quite wide and ranging, including commercial as well as residential. So the conversion products that we obviously have our standard bridging, which also includes up to 20% of conversion costs. I'll talk about that a little later. We have light refurbishment. Our light refurbishment is up to 50% of renovation costs of the purchase price. We also do not just residential, but semi-commercial and commercial, and we also do full-on ground-up development finance. So there's a whole range of products. We'll come across, I've got a product sheet later on in the seminar, and I'll go through those individually for you. But any questions, just give us a shout at the end. So I always like to do a couple of case studies because I think it's really important to actually see something real. This was a very recent one, and I know the pictures aren't great on the screen, but if you look at the very far left, it was the before picture. This actually was an old daycare centre. So it was basically one of our brokers that we use, Synergy Commercial Finance. They required a standard bridge to look at the completion of an old daycare centre and actually to aid the conversion of it into 4 residential dwellings. You can see sort of it's quite dark in the middle, but you can see as they were doing the refit and then afterwards they did it to a very good high spec. You can see the pictures on the top and bottom. That's what it looks like now. And there are 4 sort of residential properties. So we lent them 225,000 over a 12-month term, and that was basically which went towards the completion of two of the four dwellings. And also, once the properties were completed, the final GDV was almost 2 million, which was more than they actually thought it would be. The valuer who went in actually went back to them, the QS himself, and actually valued it up. And their exit was actually sale. They originally were going to rent them out, but they got really good offers. The price was more than they thought it was going to be from the start, and they actually sold all four. They're now a regular customer of ours. This is their third uh, sort of property that they've done, and they really specialize in that commercial to residential. And you can see the sort of a care home or an old daycare centre kind of lends itself to residential anyway. There's not that much that can be done. So internally, it cost a lot less than they thought to actually convert that into a really high spec set of four properties. And that's just a typical case study of what we do. We look at all kinds of commercial properties in all kinds of state of play, to be fair. This one, the external was very strong. Internally, it was a bit of a mess, as you can see from the pictures, but externally, it's quite a nice property. We look at all kinds of properties and all kinds of state of repairs. We can look at properties that are, literally have got problems, get a structural engineer's report and see if we can renovate that and make those problems sound. So we're not afraid of looking at very poor commercial properties or even residential properties. A second case study, again, you see this a lot, I'm sure you will as well. This was basically a rundown series of, I think it was three buy-to-let properties. As you can see on the left-hand side, they were, I think, a funeral home was one of them. And they were just basically then run down, untouched, closed down. Person came along, bought them for 187,000, which was a really good price. It was at auction. They were looking at sort of 240, so he got it really, really good value. Build cost was 332. As you can say, there was an awful lot of building to do. As you can see during the central picture there, you can see that actually it was pretty horrendous inside, and the external, there's quite a lot of fascia stuff to be done and roofing to be done as well. So the GDV in the end up was 990,000, so just shy of the million. We actually gave them a 473,000 pounds pot in the end. So the day one advance to purchase was 111 towards purchase price, and then the rest of it was build costs. They actually went over slightly on their costs, but we supported them on that as it was well within LTV and LTGDV. And as you say, they bought the three retail units, they were closed, planning to convert them to three terraced houses, and they constructed three new builds. They weren't particularly high spec. They were good, well developed properties. Didn't cost them too much. It was a brand new limited company with two directors, and they were a builder and a plumber. They'd done works for lots and lots of other people, but this was the first one for themselves. So again, don't be afraid that it's a first time builder or self developer. This was a building plumber who'd done hundreds of various things before. We just looked at them to help them with their first ever project themselves for the limited company. So looking at that, you can see they did a really good job, and their exit was actually onto a buy-to-let property, and now they rent them out at £52,000 per year. So they're making a handy little profit on that, even with the increases of base rate currently. Hopefully they've got themselves on a fixed rate, and they're doing very well with their rental income. All three were snapped up fairly quickly, and all three at the rental income that they wanted. So it was probably a good way of looking at something that can be done on budget. And they did it sort of with very simple furnishings. They didn't go overboard, high spec like the previous one we saw. But this one can be done relatively cheaply for a good pricing, and they're making profit every month from that property. So as I said, our bridging criteria, hopefully you can see it's a little bit small, and I'm not getting any younger, so my eyesight's not the best. But you look at sort of what we can do. We obviously lend in England, Wales, and Scotland. That's important for you to know. And we also do solutions in the semi-commercial, commercial market, as well as residential and HMOs. We look at auction purchases quickly. We look at 100% funding options if they don't have any deposit at all, with additional security, which can be a first or second charge. We have a developer exit product, and that just works very easily on a wind and water type basis. So, as we've seen some of our competitors stop development funds if they've gone overreaching or over budget or over term, we look at, as long as it's wind and water type, we'll come in, take out that first funder, and give them funds to complete that exit and get out in there, and then they can be anything from 3 months up to 12 months as well. So we can do that. We title insure the legal process, meaning a quick turnaround time. If you look very, very closely and very squint at the actual bridging products, Our standard bridge and auction bridge, which also includes cost of works up to 20% of the market value, we go up to 75% loan to value on that, and anything rates from 0.69%. That again is completely varied. Various brokers have different forms of commission structures. We can play around with, exit fees, lowering the rates. We can play around with arrangement fees and lowering commissions. So there's all things that you can talk to. Just talk to myself or any of my BDMs around the country to talk about things like that to get the pricing, but roughly 0.69 for 75% on a standard residential bridge with up to 20% of works. What we class as a light refurb is up to 50% of the work. So in simple maths, if you're buying a £200,000 house, if it's doing up to £100,000 of works, that is a light refurb in our world. As such, we'll go up to 70% and it's around 0.9%. Again, moving on from that medium refurb, it's going from 50% to 100% of the works compared to the value of the property. So again, we'll stick with the 200 grand because it's nice and easy to remember, a 200,000 property and they want 150,000 pounds of works, it's a medium refurb in our world. Again, we do that at 70% loan to value and around 0.95%. If it's a heavy refurb, this is where they've got a shell of a property usually, and they actually need to do more works than the cost of the property itself. So if it's a £200,000 property and they're spending £300,000 on the works, we're classed as a heavy refurb. That then deducts the LTV slightly to 65%, and it's around 0.99%. None of those have exit fees on, by the way, which is important to note. We also look at commercial and semi-commercial properties, commercial properties up to 65% and semi-commercial up to 70%. We've actually seen a really big increase in the semi-commercial market, generally going from a semi-commercial, you remember those rows of shops in estates, lots of those being turned into flats and apartments now all over the place, from all kinds of areas as well. It seems to be the in thing that they don't, if they've got a semi-commercial property and they had an office or a storeroom above, a lot of the time those are now being made to actually create wealth and be an apartment or rental income above that, keeping the shop sometimes and sometimes changing the whole thing to fully resi. Again, we'll do up to 70% loan to value on those properties. And the developer exit, as I said, as long as they're wind and watertight externally, we'll do up to 75% and around the 0.75% mark. That is becoming one of our biggest sellers just because people are struggling with either going over term or other lenders are pulling the funds for them or not wishing to give them any more. So we're looking at that as up to 75% to finish off a property, mainly the internal renovations, obviously, but because we can obviously take out the original funder, we can then potentially, if it's up to 75%, give them funds to finish off the process as well. So what do we require? Well, if it's a very simple Roma flow deal, we need basically an AIP signed and an application form completed and signed. That is it. In addition to that, because there's some works to be done, we'd want to see either the planning permission in place or if it's a change of use consent, and then simply a cost of works on top of it. So if you're light refurb and your standard, that's all we'd need. And so it's a very simple process. For your standard, which includes 20% of conversion costs, we can do that through Roma Flow, which currently 80% of all of our deals in Roma Flow are completed start to finish within 28 days. So it's an interesting one. You don't need a lot of work from yourselves. You don't need a lot of information from yourselves. That generally works perfectly for an auction purchase or a very simple, quick flip and sort of tart up and turn, if you like. It's just basically going from if it's up to 20%, you've generally got a kitchen or a bathroom or a central heating system and not much else in a lot of these cases. But if you do that, there's nothing else we actually require from you to actually get it into underwriting. And then basically any questions. I know some of you came a bit later, so I'm happy to go over any parts that you missed. Obviously, that is our standard. If you've got the inquiries at Roma Finance, that comes through to our team in Manchester at the head office, but we've also got BDMs across the country. If you pop on our website, you'll see which BDM is in your area. If you're struggling to find the BDM in your area, just pop an email through to me. I'm on there as well. And again, the 0161 number goes straight through to our reception and you'll ask for underwritings or sales or customer services. Ask for sales, you'll be put through to a BDM at that point anyway. So have we got any questions? We'll make this available to all of you anyway. We'll put it on the website. We'll also get it out on social media. But if you do want a copy for yourselves, just send me an email through to that inquiries or steve.smith@romafinance.co.uk and we'll get a copy of this straight out to you on your email as an attachment. Okay, please go ahead.
Steve, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah. Steve, can you look at land with already planning permissions on it?
Yeah, so land with planning permission, we can look at. We only look at that at 55% loan to value, though.
Okay.
Obviously, if they've got the planning permission and they're looking to develop it, we can do the development funds as well, 100% of funding. But we can look at land only deals with planning. We can't look at land if there's no planning at all.
All right. Okay. Because I'm looking at one case. Maybe we have to talk.
Yeah, by all means, just drop me an email after this or give me a call after this. My email's steve.smith@romafinance.co.uk or pop it through to the inquiries and they'll send it on to me anyway.
All right, that's good. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions on what we've seen today? As I say, I can get this report out to you and it'll be on our website as well. No, that's great. Let's leave it there then. As I say, you know where I am. If you need to get hold of any of my team, just please go through and we can take it from there. Thanks very much, everybody. Look after yourselves and take care. Thank you.